In 2001, Justice League launched on Cartoon Network. The show received much acclaim, gave way to Justice League Unlimited, and created a blueprint that box office busting superhero movies and TV universes are still using today. But that original show had a secret, a deep, dark secret.
Bruce is kind of a Marvel guy also.
Bruce Timm co-created Batman the Animated Series, the new Batman Adventures, and Batman Beyond, shows that beckoned in a new era for DC and superhero storytelling. And yet, Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman weren't Bruce's childhood heroes. Oh no, Bruce Timm was a Marvelite.
I hate to say it, a lot of the DC characters were kind of bland.
Instead of running it back with the same old stories of Batman saving Gotham and Superman saving all of humanity, the team behind Justice League was after something different. They wanted characters with as many layers as they had powers, whose storylines could go in different directions and make audiences care.
What Stan Lee did was take those people in circus costumes from the 30s and ground it in the emotional reality of our lives.
And it worked. With a brilliant team of writers, actors, and artists assembled, the show started doing things never before seen in comic-inspired cartoons. But it wasn't easy.
I hadn't done that at all. I'd never done that.
Doing a show where 7 white people save the universe every week seemed kind of boring to me.
This is slightly arousing. Is this okay?
This isn't Super Friends, this isn't Super Friends, this isn't Super Friends.
The grit and comedy and conflict in this animated world was refreshing, well received, ahead of its time, and taken right out of the other team's playbook. This is the inside story about how Justice League revamped how superhero stories were told on screen and did it the Marvel way. Coming off of Batman and Superman animated shows, there was one big question on the minds of DC animators and writers. Could they pull off a Justice League show?
The mantra was, we cannot do a Justice League show. We don't know how to do a show that big, you know.
It's complicated.
So, that answers that, but to understand why that mantra existed, it's important to have a little context of the previous 85 years worth of superhero content. Marvel and DC have long been rivals. It's like the Yankees and the Red Sox, Xbox and PlayStation, the Beatles and the Stones. Pick a side. But you must admit that they're very, very different things. From the beginning, DC leaned into the more powerful, less nuanced superheroes. Look no further than the Man of Steel, a handsome alien who could do everything. He came from Krypton, so any outrageous powers could be attributed to his otherworldly upbringing. By contrast, Marvel's claim to fame when it ascended in the early 1960s was how it rooted its characters in the real world. Spider-Man could swing on a web, sure, but he also had homework and girl problems and a mean boss. Over the decades, there would be a push and pull between the two labels, as DC would learn to treat its often godlike characters with more humanity, even while Marvel delved into more epic stories and characters themselves that once might have seemed more at home at DC. But by and large, DC tended to be seen as the home of a pantheon of heroic figures, while Marvel focused more on guys like this. For DC, there was obviously something to its conglomeration of powerful aliens and gods, as the idea kept resurfacing with various levels of success. In 1973, ABC gave us Super Friends, which was Justice League on jolly steroids. The show spanned 12 years in 7 different titles and offered a very kid-friendly version of superhero crime fighting. Despite any commercial success and appeal, the early Justice League and Super Friends were pretty one-note. Invincible superheroes defeated vincible bad guys. No one wanted to add other dimensions because the target demographic was children, and producers weren't worried about delivering complex characters or storylines. So it was, and so it always had been, until a young animator at WB named Bruce Timm produced Batman the Animated Series.
All of these people were artists first and fans second. And that's the difference between an adaptation that really honors something and fan fiction.
The show first aired on Fox Kids in 1992 and quickly became one of the most applauded cartoons. While it was part of the Saturday morning lineup, Batman the Animated Series was not a traditional kids show. The storylines were compelling, the characters were flawed and layered, the villains and heroes had interesting relationships. The same style carried over from BTAS to the new Batman Adventures and Superman the Animated Series and then Batman Beyond. Each show pushed the envelope as far as what could be accomplished in children's programming and moved Timm and his co-creators closer to doing something new, something daring, something bigger.
Bruce always used to say, "I'll never do a Justice League. There's no effing way I'm going to do it." And Obviously, they were asking him. So
The shows drew neither the ratings nor, more importantly, the merchandise sales WB demanded, so Timm and producer James Tucker went back to the drawing board. They assembled a quickie pilot where the Justice League served as mentors to a trio of teen heroes.
We were totally pandering to Kids WB because we knew they didn't like the shows we made well.
No one will touch it, not even public access.
The pandering didn't work, but it might have created just enough spite to take the idea somewhere else.
That pitch got shot down, and so Bruce was just pretty, like, screw him. And literally he was like, you know what, I bet I can call Cartoon Network right up and sell a Justice League show.
Talk to me.
So look, we're thinking about doing a Justice League cartoon. He said, great. How many episodes do you want to do? I said, 22? He said, great. When can we have them? I don't know, a year from now? Great, let's do it.
Perhaps just as important was the toy company going all in on the concept.
We need the Justice League! But Mega Dangers require Mega Armor! Activate Superman! Electron Blaster Flash! And Blade Wings Batman!
That was Mattel at that point. They were like, yeah, let's do this. Never-ending toy line, full of heroes. They would always give us crap about, it's like, oh, yeah, can we do more like, weird variants on Batman? Because the villain characters don't sell as well. It's like, oh, okay, so here comes Neon Street Luge Batman. This was different. It was like, yeah, 7 heroes, and we can do variations on those 7 heroes.
And just like that, they had caught the car, or should we say Batmobile. After vowing to never make a Justice League show, their number had been called. They had to put a team of DC heroes together, even if those DC heroes hadn't been Bruce Timm's heroes when he was growing up.
Honestly, I was always more of a Marvel kid when I was younger. So group dynamics to me was the Avengers.
A lot of work went into trying to establish the dynamics of the characters, because what sort of our mantra going in was, this isn't Super Friends, this isn't Super Friends, this isn't Super Friends. Part of that was that Super Friends were all this sort of generic good guys, and they were sort of more or less interchangeable. And so we worked very hard to sort of find a personality and a niche that each character would fill that would be a unique space. And that gave room for them to bounce off of each other.
And so, building the perfect Marvelized team of DC characters was underway. First, they had to choose the characters, then figure out how these characters would interact and what would make those interactions worth watching. Could they do the one thing no other superhero show had managed, and the thing that Marvel Comics had mastered decades earlier? Could they make a team of impossibly strong superheroes relatable? At a glance, the roster they put together might seem too powerful, too disjointed, or too DC-ish. Upon closer inspection, you can see how the characters and character choices they made created the perfect 7-person puzzle.
And I believe that if we stayed together as a team, we would be a force that could truly work for the ideals of peace and justice.
What? Like a bunch of super friends?
More like a Justice League.
If there was one question during pre-production that already had an answer, it was how the Justice League team would handle the Caped Crusader. Batman was the horse that got them there, and Kevin Conroy, the undisputed voice of Batman. In addition to his sound, Conroy's take on the character fit into the creative team's approach to the show. We were lucky enough to speak with the legendary voice actor before his passing in 2022.
He's such a damaged character. He's such a damaged man. He cannot allow himself to be intimate with anybody. He can't. They saw him more as an outsider, almost a begrudging joiner. He only joined because he had to get things done. You know what I mean?
Conroy played a person, not an unbeatable crime fighter. Even with all the billions and fancy gadgets at his disposal, the guy from Batman the Animated Series was a real person who fought for justice and desperately needed therapy.
And the idea of Batman going out into outer space is kind of goofy, but when he's hanging out with gods and super people, he has to do it.
Though Conroy might have been the shoo-in for the role, the question remained as to how Batman would work as one slice of a 7-slice pie. How would any of these superhero performers handle being part of a collective as opposed to the one and only?
They were happy to be part of an ensemble piece like this, but they also would like to have had more screen time.
This was the inherent problem with the Justice League pitch. Could the show feature that many superheroes and still explore them individually? Super Friends didn't even try. Each character was an unexciting shade of a big, powerful rainbow. The writers for the new Justice League understood from the outset that turning this group of individuals into a team would be a challenge. It wouldn't be easy, but it needed to happen if there was any hope of grounding these characters in reality. If it was going to work, they needed to get it right on more than just the script and stories. They needed the right ensemble. To pull that off, they needed the ultimate ensemble builder.
Andrea Romano, as the casting person who first fleshed everything out, she has a tendency to really screen the actors well.
Of all the shows I've done, and I've done many, and they all became little families. But this one is a family that has lasted for a really long time.
Romano was a casting director with director chops, especially when it came to voice acting. She'd been the voice director for the run of Batman the Animated Series, as well as Superman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. From the audition process through the actual recording, she could coach performers along the way to make sure they knew what the producers wanted them to do and how to actually do it. But it wasn't just about hiring the right Kevin Conroys and Phil Lamars and Susan Eisenbergs. It was about getting them in the same room at the same time.
It was something that I was aware of, the complications of a cast that large, and my desire to always do ensemble records.
First, the writers had to create scenes and storylines that had some semblance of realism. Then, the actors had to be invested enough in the story to give natural line readings, which is way harder when you're all alone in a sound booth.
I've been in studios, I've been recording when I'm a guest on another show, where you go in and you just do all your lines, and you have an assistant director reading you the cues, and it's just you. But you just don't get the same performance as you get from people who are getting the energy from the other actor and are actually reacting. The scenes with Mark Hamill just wouldn't be the same scenes if I wasn't getting that insane energy from Mark. And the scenes of the Justice League wouldn't be the same if you didn't have that energy of those 7 people together in a studio.
This kind of reactive energy between performers made a huge difference in the quality of the performances. It also made it easier for the creators to watch relationships develop and spawn potential storylines.
I don't have time to pursue a relationship. My work is too important to allow any distractions. Diana's a remarkable woman. She's a valued friend. She's standing right behind me, isn't she?
Batman was still cool and strong and dark and brooding, and Wonder Woman was still rad, fierce, powerful, and kick-ass, but also, just maybe, they both wanted to kiss sometimes?
Sorry.
Don't be.
As we saw on Batman the Animated Series, once that door was cracked open, the Dark Knight started having emotions that were bigger than just beat up but for sure don't kill the bad guys. And with Justice League, the character was opened up to all kinds of new feelings.
We got a little bit of pushback that, oh, Batman's really quippy in this show. And it's like, I'm okay with Batman being funny as long as it's dark. As long as his sense of humor is like kind of pissy and dark.
I'm expected back in Metropolis.
Another key to the city.
Andrea knew that I sing and I like to sing. And Bruce Timm is the one who said, how Batman would never sing? How could Batman sing? And someone came up with the idea of, well, Am I Blue would be a good idea.
Am I blue? Am I blue? Ain't these tears in my eyes telling you?
Conroy was great in Batman the Animated Series. Surrounded by the right people and given the right scripts, he was just as great, if not greater, in Justice League. That said, Conroy was no longer the de facto lead, and Batman certainly wasn't the team leader. When it comes to the DC character in charge, one man almost always steals that honor. See what we did there? Steals? Man, he's the Man of Steel. We're talking about Superman.
I have fought hard over the years to earn your trust, and I solemnly swear to all of you that I will continue to uphold the ideals of truth and justice, not just for America, but for all the world.
Superman put DC on the map because of the enormity of his power and perfect hair. He's been popular for almost 100 years, which is a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, everyone knows Superman. On the other hand, what the heck is there left to do with an invincible guy who's seen it all?
It was difficult navigating Superman in that group.
Actor George Newbern replaced Tim Daly from Superman the Animated Series to play the Man of Steel in Justice League.
Because this time, I won't stop until you're just a greasy smear on my fist. Let's go.
And none of the show's producers wanted to reinvent a legendary character. Top to bottom, the people making Justice League were comic book fans, with an appreciation for the history that got them there. Superman would still be the classic hero that people had known for decades.
I wanted to serve the purest form of what I thought Superman was. I didn't want a nuanced, didn't need a nuanced version of Superman. I don't think people wanted a nuanced version of Superman. I think they wanted steak and potatoes and a nice salad on the side.
However, in terms of his powers, Superman remains one of the least grounded characters in comic book history. Sure, he looks like a Midwestern corn farmer, but he's actually an immortal from another planet.
A lot of the challenges that we had was taking the sort of the ideas behind the Silver Age stories and draining the goofiness out of it.
Since the producers didn't want to reinvent Superman, they had to use him in ways that would serve their version of storytelling. He could be strong and fast and dashing and all of those things, but he wasn't there to save the day every episode.
Did play the Worf card a lot. An alien shows up and they can take out Worf, then suddenly you go, oh shit, this guy's a badass. So we did that a lot with Superman. It's like, somebody would show up and, my God, he took out Superman.
Superman stood in the front on the show's posters and assumed the role of team leader, but he didn't set the tone for the show. In a lot of ways, he was there to be undermined, or what the wrestling world calls a jobber.
We would electrocute him at least once every 2 or 3 episodes.
In a way, making Superman less the primary hero was the shift the show needed to shake that generic DC stigma. The strongest, fastest guy with the most perfect hair wasn't the hero of every storyline. In fact, sometimes his main purpose was to make the bad guys look good. It was the kind of stunt Marvel might have pulled. It made room for other characters to have their moments where Superman would have previously taken up all the limelight. And it's not as if the Man of Steel wasn't given some choice moments throughout the series run, like when the show would explore how a living god coexists with the world of cardboard he's sworn to protect.
I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die.
Mother, forgive me.
Unlike Superman and Batman, Wonder Woman was new to the world of the DC animated universe, as the shows that began with Batman the Animated Series were called.
She was coming from Themyscira. She was joining this group of people she didn't know.
For her DCAU debut, we meet Diana as a newcomer to a man's world, with a slightly abbreviated origin that ties into the League's foundation.
We didn't have time to do the whole contest thing with her, and so we came up with this idea of her going in and stealing the lasso. And as far as I know, this had never been done before in any of the comics and things like that. And then, a few years ago when the Wonder Woman movie came out, lo and behold, what does she do? She goes in and she steals the stuff. And it's like, hey!
Like Superman, the original Wonder Woman was overly powerful. Super fast, super strong, not really susceptible to bullet wounds. To avoid having her fall into the same traps as the Man of Steel, Justice League creators needed to find a way to make their Diana a little softer around the edges.
I did hear Bruce say in an interview that the reason he cast me was because there was a certain vulnerability in my audition.
They weren't auditioning to see who sounded the most like Linda Carter or who made the most realistic fighting noises. The goal was to cast people who sounded like people.
I had to be both warrior and princess, and I had to give them each equal measure.
Then I guess you'll have to feed me. Don't be afraid, little man. I won't bite.
When I would become too princess-like, she would just constantly remind me, like, you're a warrior, toughen up. Because I would tend to lose some of the toughness and the strength. And that's, you need to bring both with Diana. Not that she was intimidated, but I think it took a while to, if you listen to those first shows, my voice is much smaller. It got bigger as I went because my confidence got bigger.
With a show full of actors who could nail the acting part, the writers could play with elements beyond the crime fighting that previous Justice League iterations never would have touched.
I loved the flirtation. And I'll tell you, one of the things I loved about it was it gave me something else to play You know, I love when Wonder Woman can be humorous. I loved when she teased Flash and have issues with, you know, Hawkgirl, and be tender with Martian Manhunter. I loved all the aspects of her.
Emotional dimensions meant more storylines, which meant developing intriguing relationships that DC fans didn't know they needed.
Wonder Woman was a very sympathetic character, and so whatever Batman was going through, she was sympathetic.
He can't allow people in. So the few people who get close, we become fascinated with, like Andrea Beaumont in Mask of the Phantasm, or Wonder Woman.
This was the early days of the internet, and we had chat boards that we would look at. And suddenly we began to see, oh, wait a minute, people are really reacting to that. Have we got something here? And so we said, well, yeah, let's explore that a little bit. And it turned into what it turned into.
The characters are adults, even if they're being played for kids. And they would have the same adult feelings that real life adults have.
This was sort of a way to silence the people who were going, Wonder Woman, Superman, we've got to get Wonder Woman, Superman. And it's like, no, we don't want to go there.
If things had been different, if the show was on Fox Kids or the WB, maybe this wouldn't have been the case. Maybe we get Wonder Woman and Superman flirting because those two were built the same. But for a crew of comic book lovers who didn't really have anyone to answer to,
we didn't get notes from Cartoon Network.
The obvious thing to do was let these feelings play out and introduce the world to Wonderbat. And it all happened because they let Wonder Woman feel her feelings. And if the very famous Wonder Woman could have feelings, think what they could do with a more novel member of the League.
We can't be worrying about each other when we're fighting the bad guys.
Too late for that. What else you got?
We're so different. I mean, look at us. Just look at us.
Historically, Hawkman was a member of the Justice League, but for this iteration of the team, it was Hawkgirl who would be a founding member.
I don't think anybody pushed back on that. Everybody kind of like, oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Comic book readers are a notoriously passionate fan base, so shaking things up can lead to blowback in a hurry.
I mean, she was controversial. I mean, a lot of fans hated her because she wasn't Aquaman.
Yeah.
But, you know.
She wasn't Aquaman. She was Hawkgirl. And she was a Latina-esque warrior who brought something entirely new to the table. In the comics, the character had always been defined by her husband, whether as reincarnated gods or Thanagarian troops. Justice League allowed Hawkgirl to earn her own identity for the first time in her history.
And we were able to build the whole Thanagarian culture as having a Hispanic sound to it, and that gave it a sense of realism that I think we couldn't have gotten if people were just doing funny accents.
And that was a wonderful thing for me too, because I do hear it from people in general, not just people that happen to be of Hispanic heritage, that say, oh, I really like that they opened it up to an actor who happens to be of Latino, and she's a freaking superhero.
Hawkgirl was the biggest deviation the team made from the original Justice League. The original incarnation of the team in the comics was pretty male and pretty white, with apologies to Martian Manhunter. But for this version, the Justice League had 2 female members from the start. With a ratio that was a little less heavy on the strong white dude, the show had an abundance of storylines not previously available to characters of this mold.
I remember like when we were doing that, when I was like, guys, this is slightly arousing. Is this okay? Because I was concerned about our differences. You know, I was a bird after all. And he said, I'm a man and you're a woman. That's the bottom line, Missy. And I was like, yes. It was just really, really beautiful.
Inspired by his Marvel fandom, Timm empowered his team to give these superheroes real feelings and conflicts. The way the writers wrote scripts, the way Andrea Romano had them perform together, and the fondness each actor had for the work ensured this animated series wouldn't be anything like what had come before.
No, I said rotate the securing bolt counterclockwise, not clockwise.
That's what I did.
Oh, no, you didn't.
The growth of that relationship was not something you saw in cartoons. You didn't see characters evolving and developing over time.
All the characters deserve credit for this, but perhaps none more so than Hawkgirl. As the League member with the least DC baggage, Hawkgirl was open to the most invention. whether that was a romance, a twist on the action, or something bigger.
Whose side are you really on?
Don't you know?
Yeah, we knew that before we wrote the pilot.
Yep, those tricky, devious, Marvel-loving writers had big, dastardly plans for the special edition to the Justice League.
We used the first 2 seasons to build up Shiera and get everybody to love her. And, Hawkgirl had been a fairly minor character in the DC universe up until that point. And this really put her on the map. So it was... Even Maria Canals didn't know until a few days before the recording that this was what was going to happen, and she was pretty shocked.
The JL writers did the unthinkable and turned things upside down by making Hawkgirl a traitor. The twist was outside the realm of what fans would have thought possible, including the fans who were on the show.
They didn't talk to me. They didn't give me a heads up when I betrayed the League. I was like, what is this? I was so upset about it. I was genuinely hurt. But again, conflict and drama only makes things more interesting. And I think that was one of the reasons that the show was so successful. It was very cinematic.
Of course, Shiera's betrayal of her fellow Leaguers was only the latest step in her journey, and she would eventually return, because nothing on this show was as simple as good guys or bad guys.
Brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight.
There were at least 3 main versions of Green Lantern to choose from. The most famous was Hal Jordan, the most recent was Kyle Rayner, and the most obvious, at least the creative team, was John Stewart.
All of us kind of just automatically kind of thought John Stewart. I don't know why. I don't think anybody was pushing for Hal Jordan. I mean, in the comics at the time, Kyle Rayner was the current Green Lantern.
John Stewart had been around since the 70s and had never appeared in any, other iteration of, the superheroes.
Just as they'd done with Hawkgirl, the show erred on the side of picking a character with a less cemented history who could fit the more realistic mold they were creating. Also,
Hal Jordan in the comics had gone crazy and turned into a supervillain and murdered like billions of people.
Having gone through so many iterations, Green Lantern didn't have the same immediate recognition as most of the other characters. He could have faded into the background and left more screen time for the more famous members of the League. But since they went in a more unique direction while also casting the inimitable Phil LaMarr, this Green Lantern was as important as any other member of the squad.
But I knew I did not want Phil LaMarr because he was on like 3 other series at the time. But he came in and he was awesome. So Phil was, easy.
Anything I took was freely offered. Maybe you should take better care of your stuff.
Justice League transformed the character from an outspoken architect to a stoic military man who guards his universal sector as closely as his emotions. The choice, while not universally popular at first, gave the show a more balanced, diverse appearance, years before studios started implementing diversity requirements.
I asked Bruce, why are you not using standard Silver Age Hal Jordan? He said, well, doing a show where 7 white people save the universe every week seemed kind of boring to me.
We didn't want to have a team that was all one color.
And this was long before, diversity and representation were on anybody's mind. That was just in his view of excellence.
With so many molds already broken, it wasn't too much of a stretch to get Green Lantern and Hawkgirl involved romantically. That was a big deal, made even bigger when the betrayal took place at the end of the 2nd season.
The growth of that relationship was not something you saw in cartoons. You didn't see characters evolving and developing over time.
It mattered to the people watching, and it mattered to the people performing.
It keeps fans invested. And we were invested. I mean, we were all invested in all the different romances. Listen, I was a huge Green Lantern and Hawkgirl fan. I mean, the 2 of them, Maria and Phil. I mean, incredible.
No one could say the creators had done wrong by John Stewart or ignored his origins. Instead, true comic fans watched with bated breath as Green Lantern fell in love with Hawkgirl and then had his world shaken. It was serious stuff. Fortunately, the writers knew it was a kids' show, and they also kept some levity.
Look, I'm usually pretty quick on the uptake, but would someone please tell me what the heck is going on here?
The Flash of Justice League is Wally West, arguably the first comic book legacy character to truly own their mentor's mantle. Barry Allen was long dead in the comics, but Wally had become a beloved character in his own right. With its roster of ancient warriors, utilitarian hardasses, and no less than 3 aliens, the Justice League needed a little bit of comic relief, which the young wisecracker Wally provides in spades. When the Scarlet Speedster shows up in TV shows and live-action blockbusters, we're usually getting Barry Allen. His personality, however, is pure West, and Grant Gustin, and especially Ezra Miller, owe a huge debt to Michael Rosenbaum's instantly lovable performance.
Rosenbaum's Flash is like the ultimate joiner. He's like, the kid in high school who's wants to be on everybody's team. He's just all over the place. So to Batman, he was just the most annoying character possible. He just had to endure him.
Don't touch that.
Oops.
The perfect Flash. Flash has to be a smart aleck. He has to be.
Bruce Timm grew up loving the Avengers. His preferred super squad had hints of reality, and in reality, everyone bickers from time to time. There's no way a 7-person team, no matter how heroic the members are, wouldn't argue on occasion. So, you make the Flash a little cocky, maybe a little difficult, and now you have some natural dissent that happens within the group. It's fine. It's healthy, even. Playing up the Flash's energetic nature made him the type of person Bruce Wayne didn't want to be around. By contrast, the actor playing him, Michael Rosenbaum, was a person everyone in the cast wanted to be around.
Somebody's got to bring the humor, because there was so much action, so much fighting, and so much stuff going on that it could get bogged down. And if somebody didn't crack a joke, both in the episode and in the session, it would get bogged down. So you could always count on Michael to crack up the room. If there was ever a tense moment for any reason, he would say the thing that would just loosen it all up, and we'd all laugh like crazy.
To have Wally West use comedy as an equalizer when he was standing toe-to-toe with Batman and Superman made him relatable to all the kids who couldn't run that fast but loved to crack wise in class and get their teachers all flustered. The fun-loving nature of the Flash brought a class clown vibe to the team, and Michael Rosenbaum gave the performance that made it all work.
Bye-bye.
I am Jean Jones.
Don't take it personally, Jean. He doesn't trust anyone.
A wise policy.
Here we have this alien that, as you say, people know of. They don't really know how to pronounce the name because it's only ever been in written form, right? So Bruce and I, as we did with Lex Luthor, we looked at each other and said, how do we want to pronounce this? Let's make it like the French Jean. Okay, Jean Jones. Okay, that's what we did.
DC has a long history of explaining away characters' powers by making them either aliens or gods. Popular examples include Superman from Krypton, Wonder Woman the Demigod, and J'onn J'onzz, also known as Martian Manhunter, although he was rarely called that in the series. Similar to Superman, Martian Manhunter comes with almost too many powers, but an extraterrestrial with endless abilities has zero basis in reality.
He breaks your heart in a wonderful way. You know what I mean? There's something so touching about his Martian Manhunter as outsider. And I think, for Diana, they bonded on that, just being from the outside and coming into this group, band, league.
The alien nature that gave the character literal strength becomes a personal weakness, which gives the show strength by making Martian Manhunter at least a little relatable. And none of these ideas would have made it from the writer's room to the screen if not for the performance of Carl Lumbly.
We cast Carl Lumbly because he has such a gorgeous melodic voice that has a sort of otherness to it.
In a voice that showed very little emotion. He did not use a lot of highs and lows in the pitch of the voice. He gave such a varied, beautiful audition and performance.
A powerful extraterrestrial with no issues is just a cheat code for the Justice League, but a guy who's trying to make heads or tails of a new world is more identifiable. J'onn provides the inciting incident for the team's whole existence, and by the time of Justice League Unlimited, he'd grown into a leader, holding it down in the Watchtower, dispatching DC's finest all around the multiverse.
There's a slight change you'll notice in J'onn J'onzz' voice between Justice League and Justice Justice League Unlimited. Small, but there's a slight distinction that we asked him to make, and he did it again beautifully.
My family and loved ones are long gone. I am the last of my kind.
I know the feeling.
He didn't have many of these. We let him have more of these. We let him speak a little more naturally in human cadence, as opposed to what we tried to create as an alien cadence.
Martian Manhunter rounds out a team of 7 famous, ultra-powerful, almost undefeatable beings. Very often, in past versions, that was it. And while the Justice League of 2001 wasn't about to introduce a super squad that consistently got bested by the bad guys, this team was full of interesting dynamics and personal grievances that would shape the way they interacted and saved the planet. The idea doesn't seem novel anymore because pretty much all superhero entertainment has adopted this model.
Proving that all these characters are viable, and there's a lot of possibilities, which now 20 years later, obviously it's all over the place. People are adapting and doing things with these characters.
The show amplified its shared universe feel once it morphed into Justice League Unlimited, which, in the wake of Hawkgirl's betrayal, opened up the roster of the team to pretty much the entire DCU.
Maybe we'll replace him with, Aquaman, or maybe we'll do a rotating person in that spot. And I said, but what if we do the unexpected, and instead of just having 7 core players, what if we have 50 core players? And I think everybody going, what? What did you just say?
After a combined 5 seasons, on May 13, 2006, the last episode of Justice League Unlimited aired. It had been 14 years that had given us 8 TV series and 4 movies, but the DC animated universe was over.
Starting with Batman the Animated Series all the way through, all the shows, they spent a lot of money on the artwork, on the scripts, on the casts, on the full symphony score. Things like that hadn't been done. And it's why you look at them now and they still look so amazing and so new, and still so fresh.
Soon after, a little film called Iron Man would prove the viability of the shared superhero universe to the world at large, a concept which owes a massive debt to DC, Warner Brothers Animation, and Justice League. Any future steward of a cinematic universe would do well to study Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Superheroes are abnormal. They aren't real, and yet, the thing that appealed most to young Marvel fans like Bruce Timm was the proposition of what if superheroes were real? What if they existed in the world we live in, even if they're capable of things no existing human can pull off? Justice League was a DC show made by some guys who loved Marvel, and it became the blueprint for how multi-hero movies and series would get made moving forward.
Something in my eyes.
Yeah, tears. It's okay, man. We all feel the same way.